All right. Happy Monday, everyone. It is almost March, which means
we are
almost out of winter, but probably not because we're in Chicago. Because this place sucks.
But we're almost out of Q1 already.
Oh my gosh. I know. It's insanity. This year is going by so fast and it's so crazy. So speaking of year, we want to talk about periodizing today because we talk about this concept a lot. We use the word periodization a lot and we want to kind of explain it a little bit more. We have some old podcasts on it, but we know we always have new listeners here and there. And so we want to make sure that we are getting on the same page with people and preaching what we preach within our coaching program, within our, individualized stuff that we do with our clients. And so we want people to understand why we do this. And hopefully, if you want to apply it, you can learn how to do that, and kind of give you an example of what we do, like with our year and how we plan out our year. Because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, act emotionally when it comes to deciding what they're doing with their diet. It's very, I feel fat today, I need to start to diet again. Or I've had a bad month, I need to diet, versus thinking about it a lot more strategically, which is, I think, the reason that many people don't see the results that they want to see, because they never think about it strategically. They let their emotions drive their choices. They let, a bad day drive what they're going to do with cutting out carbs or whatever it is. And there's no approach to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and what actually works.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important for you to have a plan, because a lot of times we see women specifically, because that's who we work with, stay stuck in this horrible yo-yo dieting cycle because they're just kind of winging it. I'm going to be super, super restrictive this week because I feel like shit this morning, as Becca just mentioned, right? And then by Friday, they fall off and they start again next Monday, or wait another week, or whatever, that looks like for each individual. And so we find that there's no strategy, and ultimately they get frustrated. They feel like they're stuck. They're resentful to the process and they feel like their body is fighting them. But at the end of the day, it's because we don't have a strategy and a plan in place, which also helps mentally and emotionally. We're going to talk about today. And so when you hear us talk about periodization, this means planning out your year, knowing when you are going to be in different phases, whether it is a cut phase, a maintenance phase, a building phase, or massing phase, or you're on vacation. And that is kind of just like your off season, where maybe you're not tracking all your food, you're enjoying some more fun things, but those should be very short, right? Like, yes. I don't know anybody who goes on vacation for like months on end. And if you are vacationing for months on end, that's amazing. But then you
need to have a plan around that.
You need to have a plan on how not to gain 20 pounds when you're in Italy eating the delicious pizza every day. So this is why, I think of our client Claudia, who was in, she went back to Italy, correct? For a month. And she was very nervous about it because all of her family wanted to, have her enjoy the foods and all those things. And we had just started working with her. It went amazing because we had a plan, because we worked on moderation, because we didn't just eat whatever, whenever. So the reasons we approach periodization, and we're going to explain a little bit deeper after we explain why we do this, what periodization is, how it looks in terms of each phase, why each phase exists, and so forth. But the reasons that we do this approach is quite a few, actually. The number one reason, you need to offset adaptation. And so what does adaptation mean? Adaptation means when you diet for too long, or you undereat consistently for too long, your body adapts to survive at a lower intake level. Your body will slow down functions. This is why people that try to diet for long periods of time, undereat, undernourish, end up with dysfunction, end up with thyroid dysfunction, end up with gut dysfunction, end up with hormonal dysfunction. It is why. Because you have not given your body adequate intake, proper quality of food, balance of intake, enough food for long enough. And so it has had to take from other areas of the body. You guys, our body is not you cut calories, I drop weight. It is you cut calories, whoa, I don't have enough energy to do what I need to do. I don't have enough nutrients to do what I need to do. And so now I'm going to start taking from other areas of the body. I'm going to start conserving energy by pulling back metabolic function. I'm going to start underproducing stomach acid because there's not as much food coming to the gut. So I don't need as much stomach acid. And that in turn results in bloating, lack of digestion and absorption of food. It's like, whoa, I don't have enough energy or nutrients to properly create hormones at an adequate level. So I'm going to lower progesterone levels, and that's going to make your period irregular. These are all of the things things that we don't think about when we go into calorie deficits for long periods of time. So when you're in this 5-year calorie deficit because you haven't dropped the 30 pounds that you want to lose for the past 5 years, one, I promise you aren't being adherent enough. And two, you are creating adaptation within your body. And this is why we only put people in calorie deficits for short periods of time. 2 to 3 months, maybe 4, if they're having like refeeds in there. And it is the number one reason that you need periodization within your nutrition, because otherwise women, when left to their own devices, are just like, I just eat 1,000 to 1,200 calories every day. And when I feel like it, I cut out carbs.
Yep. And your body basically says, okay, this is my new baseline. And so it gets harder and harder, and people stay stuck in this cycle forever, and they fear eating more. But I just talked about it today on my post. Like, you need nourishment. Your body has metabolic needs. And what does that mean? It has energy needs, AKA calories, just to support all of your hidden functions, right? Your heart pumping blood, breathing, blinking, like all of these things that just happen and keep you alive every day, which is amazing. The body is such an amazing vessel. But hormones start to get dysregulated. You start to crave things. You're not sleeping as well. There's all different types of things that can happen here, just as Becca went through. And so you need to understand that the answer is not to eat less. The answer is to eat more and bring back health. Second thing here is periodization increases adherence. Why? Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A calorie deficit and the work that you need to do in a calorie deficit sucks. It's a lot of freaking work.
It's so hard.
It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of discipline, and it's not fun, right? Maintenance is so much more fun because you have more wiggle room. And, especially if you're somebody who is strength training, you have kids, maybe you're working or running a business, your energy is a little bit lower because you have removed energy from the body. And so you just don't feel optimal in a calorie deficit. Okay. And so when we can cycle in and out of calorie deficits, give your body breaks, incorporate refeeds or maintenance weeks or maintenance periods, meaning let's say 6 to 8 weeks in between, a set amount of time that you're going into a calorie deficit to cut, you feel a little bit better, and then you're excited and you're more adherent going back into the cut. Mm-hmm. And this is also why Becca and I both, I shared a little bit about my cut that I did last fall. I did 2 stints of them. Becca just finished hers. Both of us were talking about it this morning, and we know when our adherence starts to suffer, meaning we're starting to take more bites of, Marcus or Carson's food, or have a glass of wine on date night, because that's what we truly want. Like, those relationships, those social connections are a little bit more important, especially after 6 to 8 weeks of an intentional, strict cut. Your adherence then starts to suffer, and that's a telltale sign you need to pull out of this deficit and not try to keep spinning your wheels and being frustrated, trying to cut more and do more. That's not the way that the body works.
Nope, not at all. And I knew it as soon, I told Liz, I planned on staying in my cut until our vacation at the end of March. It's February 22nd today. I decided yesterday, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It is so much mental effort to do those things and to truly be as adherent as I know I need to be to see progress. I was like, I'd rather eat enough and just train for performance, because I know doing that will allow my body to change as well. My body will continue to change. A calorie deficit is not the only way to get your body composition to change. If I go towards training for lifting heavier, being stronger, building muscle, my body will continue to change. I will probably continue to lose weight, eating enough for my body to do those things and not be deprived, not feel like I can't eat, a bite of cookie or a muffin or whatever it is that I want. And so I'd rather do that. Much easier for me. I can be adherent doing that. There's a little bit more wiggle room, and I can still see progress. It might not be as rapid as the progress I got during those 8 weeks, but I'll still see progress and I'll still feel good. So I did it until I got to a place physically where I felt comfortable again postpartum. And now I'm ready to be like, I don't care how long the progress takes, because I'm going to be a lot more happy doing this and a lot more adherent to do this, versus me eating 1,750 calories is hard. Some days I'm hungry. I have to avoid the bites of food. I hate doing the going out to eat and not being able to order what I want once a week. It's just hard. So
I want to add something to that really fast. Sorry to interrupt you. So when we look at adherence and compliance with clients, these things that we just covered are very important, because if you want to optimize results and not waste time in the cut phase, you need to be adherent and you need to be consistent. Now, when you pull out into a maintenance phase, This does not mean that you get to go out and start eating all the fried foods and the pizza and the beer and the wine. This means that you basically have pulled yourself back up 400 to 500 calories, kind of depending upon the depth of your deficit. And you're still mindful of nourishing your body with one ingredient whole foods, rather than just flipping the switch and be like, well, my cut is over. I'm in maintenance. And so I get to eat donuts and pizza and all these yummy, delicious foods, because that is a sure way to regain the weight. So I wanted to just clarify that, because it's very important from a mindset perspective that just because you're not in a strict cut phase, you are still focusing on nourishing your body and giving it the right nutrients to build and function properly.
Yeah. I will still track. I will still go out to eat only once, maybe twice per week. I will still meal prep. I will still do all of those things that I was already doing. Limit processed foods, because those are the things that I know help me maintain the progress that I saw during my cut. The maintenance is just extra calories, extra nourishment, which brings us to our next reason why we do periodization, because it helps keep the body nourished. You guys, your body needs nutrients and vitamins and minerals to complete the everyday functions that it has to complete to keep you healthy. And so when you are eating 1,200 calories, even if you are eating immaculately, even if you are eating all the vegetables and some fruits and protein and healthy fats, I promise you, as an adult female, you are not eating enough nutrients and vitamins and minerals for your body to optimally function. There is no possible chance. And that is why when you undereat for long periods of time, your body becomes undernourished and you get to a place where dysfunction starts to happen, because your body needs these things, you guys. It is not just a matter of lose weight by cutting calories. You start to become malnourished. And so you need more calories to get those foods. That's why when we put people into cuts, we emphasize whole foods so much, because you now have less calories to get nourishment from. You need to make the most of what you're eating. And so when you're in the calorie deficit and you're in those cuts, you can't be using a bunch of processed foods to hit your macros. Like, you need to be eating whole foods that give your body benefit, because you are already at a loss for how much nourishment your body should be getting. So the periodization helps make sure that adaptation doesn't happen, but also that you don't become undernourished.
Yep. And the final reason that we're going to cover today is the mental and emotional stress. Okay. The psychological component that a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah.
It is mentally taxing to try and diet and constantly become a smaller version of yourself. Like, to feel like you're not enough every day if the scale is not moving fast enough, right? Or that you're fighting an uphill battle because things are moving slowly, maybe slower than they have in the past from your first diet attempt, or when you were 20 and now you're in your 40s. And so this is why we don't take calorie deficits lightly, and we don't just throw any of our clients into them, because we want to set you up for a proper deficit and know that you are going to be able to adhere and focus on getting adequate sleep, managing your stress, getting your workouts in. You're prepared to meal prep and build your food or meals with one ingredient whole foods. And so at the end of the day, it's something that we know is very challenging for people, and we don't take it lightly. And this is why having those breaks intermittently are so impactful from a mental standpoint. And I wanted to read one post that is actually from our friend Aram, who was just interviewed on our podcast, and we're going to be airing his episode soon. But I feel like this speaks so perfectly for this part that I have to share this. He says, some days you're going to feel amazing in your clothes and in your own skin. And other days you're going to feel like you're spilling out of your clothes like a tube of toothpaste. So the message here is try to capitalize on the days that you feel good and emphasize your habits, right? By fueling your body well, getting your workouts in, taking as many steps as you can, maybe spend time stretching, eat something with more protein, veggies and fruit, less processed foods, right? Get to bed early and wake up tomorrow and attack tomorrow as a new day. You cannot do this if you are emotionally driven without a plan, because I promise you, there are going to be days, even in your cut phase or in your maintenance phase, that you feel like you're spilling out of your clothes, like he says, a tube of toothpaste, or like Becca and I call them, like fat days.
Yep. I mean, you're a female. Most females have a cycle that makes you feel different at different times of the month. I feel awesome right around day 3 of my period into ovulation. Once ovulation hits, I feel awful. I feel so bloated. I feel just like, and not awful, like my symptoms aren't that bad. I think postpartum, they're a little bit more exaggerated just because your first couple periods postpartum tend to be a little bit more intense. But, I feel like I have stomach cramps. I feel a little bit bloated, and then I feel a little puffy until my period comes again. It's just how your cycle works, guys. It is what it is. Like, it is somewhat normal to have those hormonal fluctuations that drive those things. So amplify the days that you feel great, and on the days you don't, wear a little bit of the looser tight, leggings, wear a baggier shirt. Just get through those days, go through the things that make you feel good, the workouts, whatever it is, drink more water, and get through them. And so what happened, I want to talk a little bit around like what happens physiologically too, in terms of to your body and its hormones when you diet for too long or undereat for too long, and why it makes it harder to stay adherent in a calorie deficit. So we talked about leptin and ghrelin a little bit. So the hormone leptin basically decreases when you're in this long period of calorie, depletion. And when leptin drops, your body reduces energy expenditure. And levels of ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, rise. Leptin is your satiety hormone. It's what helps make you feel full after eating. It reduces the energy expenditure that you basically burn in a day. And so when you're in that calorie deficit, you're no longer burning as many calories and you're actually hungrier. And obviously this makes your hunger, more difficult to adhere to that calorie deficit because you're hungry. This is what happens when you diet. The increased hunger signal is another mechanism your body uses to maintain its level of body fat. That is what your body is trying to do. Maintaining a level of body fat is what your body feels safe doing. So it is going to fight to stay there. Evolutionarily, this makes sense because your body wants to hold on to fat as periods of scarcity could happen in the future. Not in today's world, but that is how your body is built. It is built to help recreate and live and survive. Those are the main two things your body was designed for. Not to make you feel banging in your bathing suit. Like, that's not what your body was created for. That's not what you want for it, and that's okay. But that's not how your body was designed. It's designed to help us stay alive and reproduce. And we need fat for those things.
Yep. All right. So the second hormone that we're going to talk about today, because there's a lot of hormones that, get dysregulated, especially when we are deprivation dieting for years on end, but your cortisol levels rise. And so cortisol is your stress hormone. And while it is good to have some cortisol, the devil is in the dose. And since dieting, cutting calories is a stress to the body, right? This is associated with increased levels of cortisol. Constantly elevated levels of cortisol lead to more ghrelin release, as Becca just talked about, poor training recovery. It can impact and impair our sleep, which leads to even more hunger and even fewer calories burned because now we're on the blood sugar roller coaster. Again, this is where we go back to high quality foods, incorporating, protein every meal and snack to keep your blood sugar levels stable and hopefully combat this stress. But at the same token, in a calorie deficit, because we know that cortisol levels are higher, we need to start to implement some other things to counterbalance this. And this is, again, something that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. But if you are, let's say, an accountant, right, and you are in the middle of tax season, it is not your time to be in a calorie deficit and add more stress onto the layer cake that you already have of stress. Because you're not sleeping well, you're working overtime, you're super stressed with all of these deadlines coming up. So maybe even the time that you are sleeping is spent thinking about and overanalyzing the things that you need to do at the office. Like, then you add in a calorie deficit and the stress that places on your body, and the fact that you're probably not eating regularly at work because you are so busy. This is just a crazy stress storm that we, would never want to put anybody into. And so we have to understand that we have to manage through our stress and incorporate stress reducing activities in the time that we are in a calorie deficit. And you should not be in a calorie deficit if you're in a chaotic, high stress time of life.
Nope. So what does periodization look like? Like, what are we talking about with periodization? There's technically 3 phases. You can kind of include a 4th phase if you want to do like massing, bulking, which not many people do that probably listen to this podcast, but there's technically 3 phases. And the first phase is your preparation phase. This is what most people will not do. They will get emotional and they'll dive into a diet without thinking, will this diet work? Because what makes that diet work is that it is different than what you're currently doing. And if you are inconsistently eating, it's not going to feel different enough to your body. So for example, if right now, some days you're eating 2,300 calories because you go out for a girls' weekend, some days you're eating 800 calories because you were too busy at work, you guys, that does not create a consistent baseline for your body to work off of. And so this first phase, in my opinion, is the most important phase because it is what allows the diet to be effective. And so this phase, if you are not currently tracking intake, you need to take at least a week to track intake and figure out what the hell you're eating. Like, are you eating a balanced diet already? Are you taking in enough calories to actually create a calorie deficit from? i.e., you should be able to cut 300 to 500 calories from your current intake level and not be at like 1,000 calories. So we need to understand where we're starting to be able to understand if this calorie deficit isn't going to be effective. And so depending on the person, if you are someone that is eating enough, or maybe you've been overeating and been gaining weight, if you know that level of intake, this phase might only be maybe like 3 to 6 weeks of consistently tracking, because do not go into a diet without being consistent with something first. It's set it like you need to know that you can be consistent with tracking before you go into a diet where you probably need to track intake to make sure you're in a calorie deficit. So I always tell people, build the habits that you want to have in the diet before the diet. So are you consistently eating enough? If you aren't, you probably need to spend a little bit longer. If you've been consistently under eating, this period of build up to the diet could be 6 to 12 months. I'm sorry to say it. It's just, for some people, it might need to be that long. If you have been under eating, if you have a lot of negative symptoms from that, if you have poor digestive health, if you're exhausted all the time, you're not sleeping well, if you have a lot of signs and symptoms of negative health, you need to bring your body back to health before you diet. It's just the reality of it. I'm sorry to say it. Most people will never do that, which is why most people will stay stuck. But this is what your body probably needs to respond to the diet. So this preparation phase is the most important phase, in my opinion, because it's what makes it successful or not. So I also think you need to create a baseline for a couple of other things. How much are you moving in a day? Like, are you getting 6,000 steps on average? Are you getting 10,000 steps? Because when you go into that diet, we like to pull as many levers as possible. And so I need to know what's your current average, even if 10,000 steps a day is like the global recommendation. Are you already getting 10,000 steps a day? And that's not going to really create much of a discrepancy for you. And so we need to know these baseline levels. How much are we moving? How much water are we drinking? What's the quality of food? What are all of these things, so that we can create a baseline to then create a difference from during that calorie deficit. So the first phase is your preparation phase. You need to create a baseline. For some people, 3 to 6 weeks if you're overeating, and you can go into a calorie deficit in a positive way. For people that have been chronically undereating, probably going to be longer.
Yep. And I will say consistency is key here, especially in a reverse diet. So we understand that it is uncomfortable to start eating more, mentally and emotionally, mainly. Physically, your body will start to catch up. And this is where we'll take a lot of people through like a slower climb on a reverse, but it's going to take you longer to get to that place where your body will respond to a calorie deficit if you are not consistent with eating enough day to day. And by that, I mean, maybe 3 days of the week you ate more, but the other days of the week you ate your 1,100, 1,200 calories. It's not enough. It takes at least 72 hours for your body to start responding to that hormonally. And again, this is why when we're going to talk about in the diet phase, some of the techniques that we use in terms of offsetting the adaptation, the metabolic adaptation, because we need to keep your hormones in mind and what is actually happening internally. So the second phase is your diet phase. This is the phase that everybody wants to get to. In my opinion, it's the phase that is not so fun because it does take a lot of effort. Again, consistency is huge here. If you want consistent results, you've got to put in consistent effort. And in the diet phase, we're basically utilizing your baseline and looking to pull 20 to 30% of your calories. If this is an individual who, let's say, is eating 1,800 calories a day, I may not pull them 20 to 30%. I may pull them at like 10 to 20% because I don't want to take them super low, especially below what we want their basal metabolic rate to be, and hold that baseline. And we see how their body responds. If it is somebody who, let's say, is eating 2,500 calories and we go to like the 25 to 30%, what we'll often do is use a couple different cycling techniques for the duration of this cut phase. So when we're mapping out your year, we will look at your schedule, we'll look at vacations, work, we factor all these things in, right? What do we have coming up? What do we need to plan around? And then what we'll do is we'll have short periods where we go into a calorie deficit, then we have a maintenance week, or maybe a couple of just refeed days if it's going to be a longer cut period. And then we'll pull out of it. depending upon, again, what that person has coming up. This could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. There's a lot of different ways you can slice the pie here with cycling. One of the most common things that we will do is like a 4 to 6 week cut with 1 to 2 refeed days each week, depending upon the person's biofeedback, how they're sleeping, their energy, their digestion, their adherence, of course, and their training as well, and recovering from training. But there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could go into a cut for 3 weeks and pull out of it for 1 week and have a longer, break here. You could go in for 2 weeks. This is called matador cycling, 2 weeks and 1 week. I personally, for myself, don't like this because I enjoyed that 1 week too much. I didn't want to go back into the 2 week cut. So I like doing just mentally, I know I'm spending 4 to 6 weeks here. I like knowing that I have 1 to 2 refeed days per week. That allows me flexibility with my lifestyle if we wanted to do date night or we had a special occasion, because then I just place that refeed and my higher volume training day on that day so that I can account to have those extra calories. And so again, it kind of depends upon the person, how they're doing in the cut, what their progress is, what their consistency and adherence is, and how their body is feeling and responding.
Mm-hmm. So the final phase is your maintenance phase. And this is essentially, the hard thing with this is if you have a large weight loss goal, you may go through multiple phases of periodization. You may go through, say you want to lose 60 pounds. You're not going to do that in one shot, guys. It's unlikely. And so usually what we do is we have people go through, maybe 12 to 16 weeks, and we wait until there's potential adaptation that starts to show, and we pull people out of their, cut for that, to prevent that further adaptation. That's how we kind of decide how long these are. So maybe you lost 30 pounds in that first, bit of your cut. And so then we would pull out to a maintenance phase for potentially 4 to 6 months. And then we would try cycling back down into a cut, see if we can get the body to respond again. And you might go through multiple periodization processes to get to that, total weight loss off that you have the goal around. But the maintenance phase is also to help sustain the weight loss that we've seen during that cut phase. And how we go about doing this is we slowly reverse people up to what is comfortable for them for their maintenance. Because I think a lot of people probably are more comfortable underneath their true maintenance. I think a lot of people could probably be eating more than they feel comfortable eating and still maintain. For example, my maintenance, true maintenance with my activity level and my, strength training is probably 2,500 to 2,600 calories, if not more some days. I don't feel very comfortable eating that much food, to be honest. It's a lot of food. And so I do usually well around like 2,100 to 2,400 range. And that's kind of where I maintain. And maintenance is a range. It is some days you aren't as hungry, you're super busy, you might be lower in intake. But on average, you are eating around a level of intake that is allowing you to maintain your weight while being nourished. Okay. And so in this maintenance phase, we slowly reverse from the calorie deficit back up to a maintenance. And it might be lower than where you were prior to the calorie deficit because you might have lost weight, which means you're burning less calories on average now. And so you have to kind of experiment with where this is for people. But this maintenance phase is where you should live most of your life. It is where, maybe you're tracking, because tracking is something you enjoy doing. It allows you flexibility with your lifestyle and not to have, I think for some people, tracking allows freedom from guilt. It allows you to enjoy things that you love in moderation. Like if I want a cinnamon roll, I track half that cinnamon roll that I want. Then I don't feel as bad about eating it because it fit into my day and I've had other nourishing foods around it, and it removes some of the guilt for some people. For other people, it can become disordered and you need to start to slowly work away from it. And so depends on the person, but this maintenance phase is a range of calories that allows you to just eat intuitively, because hopefully from this process, you have gotten to a place where you understand how much a day of 1,900 calories looks like, how much a day of 150 grams of protein looks like, how much protein is in 5 ounces of chicken, what 5 ounces of chicken looks like, and all of these different things, the foods that make you feel good, the foods that you need to moderate, and you create basically your best form of your lifestyle. We talk a lot around like non-negotiables too during a maintenance phase, because maintenance cannot be, I just go back to eating whatever I want, whenever I want. And I kind of just go off of how I feel, because to be totally honest, food today is too addictive. It is too tasty, and people cannot control themselves with it. It's just the reality of it. So you need things like, I only go out to eat 2 times a week during my maintenance phase. I still work out 5 days a week. I still get in the proper amount of water. I still eat 3 balanced meals. Like the majority, that you need these things because unfortunately, guys, life happens. We slide back into old habits. The mindset comes into play here a lot, and we get to a place where we just aren't focused. And then we we find ourselves gaining weight back slowly usually.